One child says, "Oh no, we should do it this way." And then you have the argument of, "Oh no, let's do it this way. Oh, but mom would have liked it this way, or dad would have liked it that way." Well, take all the ambiguity out of it, do it ahead of time, get the house in order.
Welcome to Talking Retirement, brought to you by NJ Life and Health. I'm your host, Ken Connolly, and each week we sit down with fascinating guests who share their insights, experiences, and expert advice to help you make the most of your golden years. Today's guest is Jo Gallo. Jo is one of New Jersey's favorite Medicare specialists, where she has helped hundreds of people with their Medicare. She's also a writer for the local publications The Berkeley Times, Corner Cafe, and Moments. Today, we will be talking about final expense insurance, sometimes referred to as funeral insurance. We will explain the basic structure of these policies, what deceptive advertising to look out for, and how to avoid the 2-year waiting period if possible. You're not going to want to miss this important episode of Talking Retirement. Let's dive into it. All right, guys, welcome to another exciting edition of Talking Retirement. Once again, we have Ocean County's favorite Medicare broker, the Jo Gallo, with us. We talk a lot about Medicare and health insurance, but today we're actually talking about final expense insurance, sometimes referred to as funeral insurance. So, Jo, can you take the lead and tell us a little bit about these policies?
You bet, Ken. First off, the one thing that, it's named appropriately, but it's a little hard to say. Final expense, funeral expense, it's going to happen to us all. But, what you have to look at is that it's a whole life insurance policy, which means it's not going to go away. There's no term on it where it's going to end and what happened to the money. This is a real policy. It's real life policy. Whole life is a wonderful policy because, once again, it does not go away at the end of so many years or a term. With that being said, the other wonderful piece of this pie is the fact that it is a level premium, meaning that if you went into this policy at, let's say, $60 a month, you're going to remain at $60 a month for the rest of your life. There are some policies that have what's called 20 pay, which means you will pay it all in 20 years. Some people, as they get older, because it is called funeral expense or final expense, it is meant specifically for that use. So again, those of us that choose to go for a full burial into the ground, you have to remember it's not like, the two guys that went out and dug a hole. You bought the casket, you went in it, so on, boom, it cost you maybe $4,000 or $5,000. Now, it's a business like anything else in the United States. It's going to cost a lot of money because nobody's going to go out there with a shovel and dig. They're going to call in the big equipment. They're going to call in a backhoe. It's going to cost money to rent the backhoe. It's going to cost money for the operator of the backhoe. It's going to cost money for them to do everything they need in prep for the viewing. It's going to cost for the viewing. Everything has a price tag. It's really not like it was 30, 40 years ago. It's a lot more expensive today. You're looking at anywhere, I'm going to say, Ken, 15,000 for a low end to maybe 25 to 30,000 on a high end. And we're talking quality of casket. We're talking, how fast everything gets done for your loved one. Because that's the biggest issue in these types of funerals, is that coordination becomes key because everybody has to work together to get everything done within a specific amount of time, or it just gets prolonged, again, costing you more money because now it's prolonged. The nice thing about having a policy, final expense, funeral expense, whole life, whatever you want to call it, for your end of life, is that you're covering those expenses so that your loved ones, your friends, anyone knows that they're not going to have to pay for it for you. A lot of younger people, I'm, my early 60s, I lost both my mother and my father in my 50s, and, there was not a lot of money to pay for the Catholic funeral. Yes, please forgive me, parents, but they were both cremated, for a lesser amount, but even that um has gone up significantly. I mean, it used to be a $2,500 cost. I watched it go to 4,000, and now I have customers that tell me they just paid 8 and 9,000 for cremation, all because they wanted to have a service or what have you in the funeral parlor at the same time. It's all expensive.
Hmm.
It's not a few bucks anymore. It's not write the check and it's covered. A lot of us don't have that money fluidly available. The nice thing about having the final expense, funeral expense, whole life, whatever you want to call it, is that it's going to give you a lump sum of cash so that the funeral director will wait for it. Usually within, I think, 10 days, you're paid as long as you have the death certificate on hand.
It's usually about 7 to
Um,
14 from what I remember, depending on
14
the
days,
policy and the
14
company.
days. So most funeral parlors, funeral directors will wait for that payment in order to make it. Now, one additional item on that is that although you can buy a policy just to cover your funeral expense, regardless of what it's going to be, you can also buy a policy that will afford additional cash for, say, a loved one that you feel that you want to offer a parting gift.
Mhm.
It's a horrible, kind of funny way to say it, but it is just that. It's nice to know that they're going to have to clean up your house. I remember when I was younger and a good friend of mine was diagnosed with a bad disease, and my mother asked him if he had his house in order, and I didn't understand that. I was only in my early 20s, and I said, "Mom, what does that mean?" And she said, "Well, does he have everything in order for when he leaves this world?" And I was like, wow, there's actually a term for that. I didn't know that at that time. I know it very well now. Having your house in order means a lot of different things. It's not only the fiscal or the accounting end of it and the bills being paid and all of the final expenses that you incur being paid, but if you're leaving behind a house that needs to be cleaned out, or a house that needs to go on the market and someone has to do the footwork behind it to get all of this in place, a final expense payout or a funeral expense, whole life, whatever you'd like to call it, a payout, you could actually buy more than what you're going to need.
Mhm.
So you can always direct someone that I'm going to put you as my person in charge of this money to make sure that everything gets done that I need to get done. Once again, getting your house in order, having your final expenses covered so that when you leave this world, it's not a burden that falls upon your only child or your five children that, one can't figure out what they want to do next. And you've already written it all out. Um, and you've
Yeah.
supplied them the cash to do it.
I think something you said, I think, is one of the biggest reasons for this policy is if you have multiple kids or multiple siblings or whatever it might be, even the best families could end up fighting over paying for it. Or it could lead to, well, I paid for the funeral, therefore I get more money out of the estate. And it can lead to bickering, especially if maybe your family isn't in the best of conditions and there is more natural bickering. This is a way for you to just set the money aside and say, nobody fight over it. It's just done. And I
Right.
think there is a lot of clarity and peace that comes when you know that it's already going to be a very stressful situation, a very crisis situation. If you're now adding money into the situation, it can make it even more stressful. So you might as well just put it to the side and say, it's taken care of. Don't bicker, don't fight. We're done.
Right. Right. It's not like just having a will anymore. Now there's, you have your will and then there's still these end of life expenses. And if one child says, "Oh no, we should do it this way," and then you have the argument of, "Oh no, let's do it this way. Oh, but mom would have liked it this way or dad would have liked it that way." Well, take all the ambiguity out of it. do it ahead of time, get the house in order so that you don't have to, ride into the next life or go to the highway in the sky or cross the bridge, whatever you want to call it, leave this wonderful world. You do it knowing there's peace of mind because you didn't leave an expense to be bickered or argued over by children, your children who are now adults, and the fighting is just sometimes can be fun, sometimes can be absolutely horrendous. Um, yeah, I had a few fun arguments with my brothers over the years, but yeah, it takes again, it takes the ambiguity out of it all. It lays out your final expense plans. It lays out your wishes. What if you never had that talk with your kids? What if you don't want to have that talk? I remember my mother giving me a envelope, and I said, and she had my name on it, and I said, "What's in it, Mom?" And she said, "It's my will." I
Mhm.
said, "Well, I'm not looking at it. I don't want to look at it. I don't even want to hold it because I love my mom that much. And I don't want to think about her leaving this earth, but it happens. Nothing I can do about that. But because she had a life insurance policy, she had a final expense policy. No, I did not sell it to her, but someone cared about her through her life to sell it to her, and she had it and everything was paid for. Made my life a whole lot easier. I lost another person in my life years ago who had nothing. His wife had nothing. And, and she went into a funeral parlor and picked out the Cadillac of caskets and made all these plans to have him, buried and so on. And I said to her, "How are you going to cover this?" And she said, "I don't know." She went in the hole for I don't know how much money. I was not in a position to help her. I did my best. I helped her kids out, but you have to do what you have to do. And, you don't want to leave the burden of, especially if you've gone through life not trying not to be a burden.
Mhm.
I know a lot of my customers now joining Medicare say, "I don't want my kids to have to worry about it. I don't want anybody to have to think about what to do with me. I want it all laid out, pretty as can be." Um, we can do that for you. We can help you do that. We can help you make the plans. We can help you get the policy. We can help you figure it all out. Um, but you got to give us a call so we can give you some quotes and you can think about it. And then you can think about, like I said, if you can't make those payments, this may be something where you want to talk to your children or your family members and find out if they would like to help you, get to where you want to be in your final moments of this life, or at the end of this life. Um,
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to look at it because you might say, or at least if you're a kid, if you're a sibling, you might in your head think, okay, that person might not have a lot right now. And that's not anything bad by any stretch. Like it happens to all of us. We have, more people in poverty in this country than are well off. It's just kind of a fact of life at this point. But you might say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to have the brunt of this cost anyway, I can get ahead of it and get an insurance policy for this person. So we're all better planned for it. We all have a better idea of what's actually going to happen.
right,
In terms of quotes, I think the one thing that we're going to make a video for this, I'll link it below if it comes out by the time this episode is, but I think one of my biggest issues is how much these commercials for 9.95 life insurance for final expenses skews people's cost of what it actually is. And they say, oh, even if you're 85 and sick, 9.95 is all you need. I think it
yeah,
really throws people off, but could you give like a more accurate quote of what would happen if you're 60, 70, that kind of thing?
sure, sure. But just to reiterate on that, or just to further discuss that 995 rate, I've called, and what you find out is they sell, what do you call it, like an increment
A
of
unit.
life
Like
insurance. A
Yeah.
unit, thank you, a
Yeah.
unit of life insurance. The unit may be $500. It used to be $1,000 for the 995, but you have to think about it. Just $10,000 will cost you $100 a month.
Hmm.
Um, and that's probably going to pay for a cremation, and that's about it these days. Maybe a viewing with that. Not much more. So they, and the other thing is again the small print. I say this all the time. When it comes to a life insurance type product, may it be term life, whole life, universal life, what have you need to talk with someone that knows the fine print, because the fine print is where they take you for a ride that you really don't want to go on. And in order to, again, get away from that, you want to speak to agents that are very honest and real and understand what they're selling. Again, I don't mean to brag and boast about our agency, but we get enough compliments for me to feel very secure in saying that you will not walk away from NJ Life and Health not knowing what's in the fine print.
So one of the things that we run into a lot of times is on top of the 995 being way too low a quote for most people in terms of getting an actual funeral covered is they have these 2-year guaranteed waiting periods. So the policy is guaranteed, but you need to keep it for a full 2 years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure, sure. Any of the policies that are out there right now have a 3 or 4 questions and you're in. The reason that you're in after 3 or 4 questions is because, again, you have this 2 year waiting period. A 2 year waiting period is, depending on your age, how you're feeling. Well, actually, it's bad for everyone because anything can happen to anyone anytime. So, a 2 year waiting period to pay for something that's not going to give you any coverage. If something happens in the first 2 years, really not so great. So, we always talk our customers to go for a full underwriting policy, an underwritten policy. Reason being is that with a fully underwritten policy, the insurance company that's providing the policy learns about you, your health, and so on. Therefore, instead of waiting for 2 years for the policy to become valid and to get full payment, you get it on day one. So, really big difference in the 2 year waiting period. And granted, going through health questions is not always the most fun thing to do, but again, think about how much time of your life you're going to give to it, maybe a minute, maybe 7 minutes, versus waiting 2 years to have a full payout. Um, yeah, it's basically, it's up to you. You don't feel like answering the questions? Don't. You can answer 3 or 4. They're not so bad. Um, or you can, like I said, and again, the 3 or 4 questions, you're going to have a 2 year waiting period. You will get your return of your premiums. However, they will take administrative costs and anything else they see fit to take from your money, because nobody wants to give you your money back these days. But on the other hand, it would go to your set beneficiary unless you take the time to answer the questions. In answering the questions, you're going to provide yourself with coverage from day one.
So Joe, we always appreciate your insight, your
You want to
anecdotes,
talk
everything
about
you
some
got.
prices first?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to
So
give out some ideas? Well, all right. So, 65 years old, um, man, probably going to cost you for 15,000, maybe about $65 a month. Um,
mhm.
so
That's
yeah,
assuming good health and everything
in
like
good
that too.
health, answering the questions, getting it done right. The more you need in your policy, the more you're going to pay. True with anything these days that we buy, the more you want, the more you're going to pay. There's no discount for buying more.
If only, right? If only.
Yeah, there's no discounts. But again, this is your life, and how you want to do it is how you want to do it. We're
Yeah.
we're telling you you can remove the burden. to your family and friends.
Heck yeah.
And it's not so hard to do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, remember the earlier you do it, the better it becomes. Joe mentioned it's level. If you wait till your mid 70s, early 80s, you might be shocked at how expensive it becomes. And it might
Right.
at that point, you're in a fixed income, you can't really afford it. So the earlier you can get in here, the better. So, Joe, if people want to reach out to you, me, any of the other brokers here, how can they reach out to us?
Hey, you can give us a call at 848 226 6897. Had to think about that. Once again, 848 226 6897. Or you can come right in the office and visit us. We're at 600 Mule Road in Toms River, New Jersey. And we 99% of the time have an agent on board who can help you out.
Heck yeah. Well, Joe, always appreciate your insight and everything like that. We will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Sounds great, Ken.